truly delighted, and many congratulations and hats off to the vision of Dr. Anurag Batra, who's decided to bat and champion yet another sunrise sector. I think the entire team at BW, Saumajit and everybody else who's worked really hard to put this together deserves kudos. I'm really excited to be here today because this is something that we're truly passionate about. It's not just something that everyone's committed to and we see a business case for it, but this is truly the big picture that we need to be looking at. And this will help us contextualize the real hard numbers that we're discussing here today. When we talk about this, the Honorable Prime Minister, on the 6th anniversary of Digital India, which we just completed, which has been one of the most marquee programs of this government, along with Make in India and Startup India, talked about decade. And he said this is the next decade belongs to technology. What we're extending the premise to include is how do you solve for real world problems and how do you empower a country which is on an economic rebound. We're in the middle of a black swan event, which has the probability of almost never happening. But when it does, it leads to tectonic and paradigm shifts. And that's a world post COVID-19. What he talks about is creating a pillar where technology works along with innovation, along with upskilling and reskilling to bring in the next era, which is truly going to be global, truly going to be exploring India's place in the global value chain. And that is what we're trying to address. So as you can see, I call it the reality and the expansion of a $2.8 billion Indian gaming dream. And how do we get there? So let's look at some key numbers. When we look at 2019 and 2020, it's online gaming and digital, where the others might have slowed down. So you were looking at an average screen time of roughly about 115 hours per week. Gaming alone drove this up to 218 hours per week. And as the numbers tell, you're looking at a 43% rise in CAGR, year-on-year growth. So online gaming, clearly in terms of economic trends, and this is the latest report that's coming from FICCI and EY, this is the segment that is exceeding all possible projections. Ourselves, we at Zupee, we've grown 110% over the course of the last year. When we look at the big picture, we are clearly looking at how do we rebound? How do we look at a developing country and an emerging economy where no one gets left behind? So what we have today working for us is the highest data consumption perhaps in the world, second only to that of the USA. What we have also are the cheapest prices for data and access. What we have is an incredibly staggering number of people who are online, about 700 million as they currently stand. What you also have are the consistently lowering prices of smartphone devices. When you couple that with renewable power, when you couple that with local language content, you're looking at an India which is potentially going to be the hub of not just India's place, but also transforming how gaming and particularly gamification is going to be seen by the world. This is a very, very important milestone that we're at the tipping point where some policy decisions, if they're done right, can actually swing us into, the orbital space that we've been discussing so long in terms of space exploration. This is where the next decade of online gaming comes in. So when you're looking at hard numbers, right, you have seen casual gaming. There was earlier discussion when Nitish talked about real money gaming and the gray areas that exist. But bucking all trends, there's clearly a pull factor and there is a push factor where when you've been locked up for 2 years and you've seen job losses, you've seen economy struggle, you've seen very creative ways in which governments globally, not just in India, are trying to pull their country back together. I've been very, very passionate about the digital economy space, and this has been my core area of intervention. The intent that all governments today have is to make sure they connect as many people as possible. When you discuss access, one of the most critical areas is what can we do as a nation to not just connect people, but make sure that they're having a safe, productive experience once they're online. And this is where gaming and gamification comes in. So you're looking at, about India reaching 65.7 crore gamers by 2025. We currently stand at roughly over 400 million. In terms of revenue shares, the latest latest KPMG report talks about our numbers being at over 13,500 crores. You're looking to hit 29,700 crores by 2025. And these are staggering numbers. So what does it make, to complete this online gaming pie? Earlier, this morning, Dr. Anurag Batra was referring to many kinds of games. If you were to broadly understand the sector, you're looking at nowhere less than 5 different categories of gaming. And this is where nuance, this is where how do you address policy making and not see this as a blanket one-size-fits-all sector or a solutions approach comes in. So if you look at key categories, you can primarily see them as esports. You can see games like FIFA and FPS leading this. Casual games is another really big sector where people didn't think this would take off, but both in terms of engagement time, both in terms of monies which are being spent, casual games have taken the lead. And then there are transaction-based games where you're looking to learn something new, you're looking to experience something new. There's a completely new category that's emerging. And this is where startups like ours are looking at learning, skilling, gamification of knowledge. So the category that we need to be all watching out for is competitive online games of skill, or COGS as we like to call them. And this is the evolution of a sunrise sector. So when we look at game installs, you have roughly 7.3 billion game installs. India is leading the world with over 17% mobile game downloads that take place. And we're amongst the top 5 online gaming markets in the world. What do you take away from this? This is not something that started in a garage. This is not something that's going to start now, become a fad and then disappear as a trend. This is a very serious sector that global investors are now today looking at. Why does it matter? When we look at charting out our $5 trillion economy dream, both in terms of who will onboard new users, who will open up new channels for revenue, and who will make sure that you have something that's accessible, that is real, that is tangible. That is what the gaming sector can contribute to our digital India dream, both in terms of job creation, making sure where we attract the investments. So there is something which is truly amazing about India. And why do our games matter? At Zupee today, we see ourselves as a behavioral sciences company. We don't call ourselves a gaming company. The deep understanding that we have of nuances. So there is no one India, and the Indian consumer again is not a monolith. We've had discussions ad nauseum about who is the Indian gamer. Deep insights into who's playing your games, what is it that Indian gamer is looking for, and how do you take this story global? So what we need to do is marry our knowledge, marry technology, and unlock this power of soft culture and diplomacy, and take the lost and forgotten games of India, making them more accessible, adding the skills piece to the layer. And this is what the world has been waiting for. We're the most incredible storytellers. So what you have is an unmatched pool of engineers with storytellers, with an incredible legacy of culture. And this is where engagement comes in. Engagement's not only about making sure you got someone online. What did you do for their mental well-being? You'd be amazed to know today the World Economic Forum talks about loneliness as the single biggest problem that we need to solve for, even ahead of climate change. Countries are now looking at happiness indexes. They're looking at wellness budgets. And this is where games, multiplayer games that are not talking about you being locked inside alone for hours, but games that are creating social experiences, games that are creating cultural experiences come in. So skilling is where solving the crisis comes in terms of gamification of knowledge, in terms of gamification of learning. If you look at the key challenges, and we've spoken briefly about it, the uncertainty. We're saying create policies which may be complex. We're willing to work with you as an industry, and a constant, consistent dialogue. See, a lot of gaming companies today are startups. Why do startups win? Because we're nimble-footed, because we can spot an opportunity and create a solution together. And this is where constant and consistent engagement, sensitization, and I believe bridges need to be built from both sides. We have to be able to convince the government equally about the legitimacy of our models, about why and what is in it for them, not just as a sector, but how is it that you put India on the global map. So skilled manpower is one of the things that we seriously need to invest in. More partnerships between industry and academia. There's clearly a gap in terms of skilled game developers. We have 225 institutions in India, and Delhi and NCR alone has 25 gaming academies. When we collaborate with the industry, when we input into talents that's ready for the job market, that's when you're truly creating opportunity. I think one of the biggest things that we still need to fight, and we still need to invest more, both in terms of information, education, and awareness, is the perception battle. Many years ago, parents wouldn't allow their children to pick up sports as a full-time career option. There would have been no Sachins and no Dhonis and no Virat Kohlis. And today, parents are okay if they see talent and they see a clear way forward, which is precisely where a lot of gamers today are talking about taking up gaming as a full-time career option. And this is where academic institutions, this is where teachers, this is where parents, this is where institutions of socializations come in. But the most important ask, I believe, for us to be able to unlock this big picture is to be able to create a central policy framework that is stable, that is predictable, that understands and protects investor interests, that balances consumer rights, but most importantly, that is also something that allows for innovation and disruption. And this innovation and learning and skilling is what is going to truly help us prepare for jobs of tomorrow. New users, new territories, and further growth is what you can truly unlock towards creating a connected and empowered digital India. Why do I say that? Digital India has programs which are truly powerful. You're looking at a broadband highway like a BharatNet, which is going to connect 600,000 villages and 250,000 village panchayats. All we need to do is look at greater access in terms of last mile connectivity. How do you look at local culture, putting that on the global map? How do you look at gamification? E-Kranti, another great project, all electronic delivery of services, improve financial access. We have to upskill over 700 million Indians to be able to get them relevant for the job market. You're not going to be able to do that through traditional models of education and delivery. Universal access to mobile connectivity, connecting the unconnected, looking at a powerful segment of 1.3 billion voices. So the other sector that the government's clearly working towards and has created the PLI scheme, there are several incentives, is the electronics manufacturing. And this is where you're looking at affordable smartphones, lowering the rate of smartphones further so that they allow apps to run, so that nobody gets left behind. And IT, the sector that everybody talks about, but where is it that you will see the next wave of growth? Where will you see the next wave of value addition come from? This is where gaming and gamification truly comes in. And this is where, when you look at employment opportunities, and these are hard numbers that I'm talking about, the gaming industry alone employed 40,000 people in 2020. We're looking at a segment of jobs which will be driven by AI, a need for immersive tech. The moment you were looking at actualization of 5G, and now conversations globally have started about 6G, you're looking at immersive programming, you're looking at talent which is going to be based on your adaptability, skills of the future, not just coding, but 3D, 4D, marketing and communications, data sciences, design, understanding of a better user interface. And this is where how much of gender balance that you're creating, how many opportunities that you're creating for women will come in, because we've seen, and there are global studies that tell you that when you have more women in your leadership teams, you're not just looking at higher profitability, you're also looking at user-centric design. You're looking at an obsession with what truly matters for your user. So 113% growth is expected, and these are not small numbers. We at Zupee have seen over 100% growth, both in terms of hiring as well as our user base. And when I say this with great responsibility. If we do our policy and regulatory framework right, if you give this certainty in terms of what is it that will drive decision making, both at the center as well as the state level, and a consistent engagement with the industry, you're looking at creating over 2 lakh new jobs. And in a country where jobs and employment are truly the priority of the government, that is why it merits serious engagement. So the World Economic Forum report today talks about almost 50% of all employees who need reskilling. 1.4 million employees need to be reskilled and upskilled by the government, and that's their own target over a period of 5 years. We're not just looking at a $5 trillion economy dream. This is a clear roadmap. How do you get there? How do you create value-added skills? And so if you have 290 million people who are working in the industry, they're working in the service sector, imagine reskilling and upskilling 50% of that. How do you get there? So this is the approach path. Gamification of knowledge and learning is the logical choice for both the government as well as companies. Using games to reach people, game-based learning, incentivizing learning, improving access, enhancing regional reach, and being language agnostic. And this is where, to Anurag's point, this is where the potential and the opportunity lies, and all the gray areas become silver linings in not just the cloud, but the big sunrise sector that you're looking at. Where there was an era of telecom, you're now truly looking at the era of gaming and gamification. So all the SOPs that industries typically ask for, and you don't really see an ROI, this is where the investment, both in terms, if the government wears the CEO's hat, you will see returns on investments right away. So when we're talking about, real and tangible examples, Tesco in the UK has a wonderful statistic. They decided to change their training to game-based learning, and over 4,000 employees were trained in 4 weeks with very, very high satisfaction levels. When I look at the big picture, just in summary, you're looking at a sunrise sector. Don't forget, this is a $3.9 billion opportunity by 2025. It's serious numbers. We truly need progressive policies. We need a central framework so that there is consistency, there is no roadblock, and there is clarity as to where the investments will flow in and how this sector will be treated. We have absolute clarity from the courts where they say there has to be preponderance of skill, and that makes your offering legal. I do not think that there are any gray areas. It is very important that we recognize the self-regulatory mechanism that the industry has put together. There are retired justices, there are eminent psychologists, there are sports persons who are looking at this sector, and we at Zupee remain committed to ushering in an era of responsible and ethical gaming. So games for skill, using them, it's staggering to see that there are 168 million children who are currently out of school. UNICEF talks about statistics where they say for development and the indices of children, we've now taken, and that's not just India, it's the globe, we've taken over a decade back in terms of the progress that we're making. So what we're calling for is recognition of this glorious opportunity. What we're also saying is make India the hub of everything gaming. And how do you do that? You create industry academia partnerships, you create institutions of excellence, you power more research that tells you, not just in terms of hearsay or somebody's personal opinion, that, hey, gaming's not good for health. We have had scientific research prove that experiences and community-led social interactions via gaming, and now you're saying the emergence of dad gaming leagues where fathers are using these opportunities to share time, lead to better mental health, lead to more competitiveness, lead to more resilience. There are children who've never seen their peers in actuality. How do you create these social experiences? And they're known to enhance better recall and better retention. So what we're calling for effectively is a movement which powers gaming for good, and we're clearly democratizing everything gaming. And this is the mission with which Zupee's approach gaming as a sector, where we're committed to learning, where we're committed to creating more such voices and making sure that everything that you've celebrated about India remains and goes global and gets multiplied 10x from here. I'll stop here. Thank you so much again for this opportunity. Happy to respond to any questions.